My mother-in-law just claimed she owns our $1.2 million house for $5. My name is Karina Friedman. I'm 34 years old, and what happened at our Friendsgiving dinner last night still has my hands shaking. While 12 of our closest friends were laughing in the living room of the Victorian home my husband Jason and I spent 5 years saving for, I overheard my mother-in-law Margaret bragging to her sister about something that made my blood turn to ice. She wasn't just talking, she was waving papers in the air like a trophy, declaring herself the new owner of our dream home. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. This is the story of how I turned a family dinner into a courtroom. 7 years ago, when Jason Smith and I got married, I thought Margaret's constant reminders about our income gap were just typical mother-in-law territory. Jason made $150,000 as a software engineer at a tech startup in San Francisco, while my freelance interior design business brought in around $45,000 on a good year. Jason is the real breadwinner, Margaret would say at every family gathering, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. You're so lucky he takes care of everything, Karina. The truth was, we both contributed to our dream. That beautiful 1912 Victorian in Berkeley Hills we'd finally bought 6 months ago after 5 years of saving every penny. I'd skip lattes, work extra projects, even sold my grandmother's jewelry to add to our down payment fund. But to Margaret, I was just the artistic wife who played with colors while her son did the real work. What bothered me most wasn't her dismissal of my career. It was how Jason never corrected her. Mom means well, he'd say whenever I brought it up. She's just from a different generation. Then he'd kiss my forehead and change the subject, usually to something about how we should give his mother a spare key for emergencies. I fought that battle for 3 months before giving in. What if something happens to us? Jason argued. What if there's a fire? Mom lives 10 minutes away. His brown eyes looked so concerned, so protective. How could I say no to safety? Looking back now, I see the first red flag wasn't Margaret having our key. It was Jason insisting she needed it despite my obvious discomfort. But when you love someone, you tell yourself you're being paranoid, that family is supposed to be trusted. I was about to learn exactly how much that trust would cost me. Margaret's emergency key quickly became her all-access pass. She'd appear 3 or 4 times a week, always when Jason was at work, and I was trying to meet client deadlines from my home office. The doorbell would ring, and there she'd be, pearl necklace, pressed blazer, and that practiced smile that never reached her eyes. Just thought I'd help organize the kitchen, she'd announce, already halfway to the cabinets. By the time she left, my carefully arranged workspace would be improved, my design samples relocated, and somehow, mysteriously, our important documents would be shuffled around. This house needs the touch of a real homemaker, she'd say, running her finger along surfaces that were already spotless. When I managed Jason's father's properties, everything had a proper place. I started working from a coffee shop downtown just to avoid her. The baristas knew my order: large Americano, corner table, outlets for my laptop. It cost me $30 a week I couldn't really afford, but it was worth it for the peace. When Jason asked why I wasn't using my beautiful home office anymore, I couldn't bring myself to tell him I was hiding from his mother. Your mom rearranged my filing system again, I tried once, keeping my voice light. She's just trying to help, honey. You know how she is about organization. 2 months ago, something shifted. Margaret started asking oddly specific questions about our mortgage paperwork. Where do you keep the deed? Is it in a safety deposit box? You know those bank boxes aren't always secure, right? Her casual tone didn't match the intensity in her steel gray eyes. I told her everything was safely stored at Wells Fargo, but something made me move our documents to a different bank that same week. Call it intuition or paranoia. Either way, that decision would soon save everything. The real warning came 8 weeks before Friendsgiving. Jason and I were having our usual Sunday morning coffee when he casually mentioned, Mom had an interesting idea about our taxes. She says if we temporarily transfer the house title to her, we could save almost $20,000 this year. I nearly choked on my latte. Transfer our house? Jason, that's insane. Not transfer, just restructure, for tax purposes. It would still be ours. He wouldn't meet my eyes, focusing instead on stirring sugar into his cup, something he never did. Absolutely not. My voice came out sharper than intended. We're not putting our home in your mother's name for any reason. He sulked for a week, giving me the silent treatment I'd grown accustomed to whenever I disagreed with Margaret's suggestions. Then came the questions about our important documents. Hey babe, where did you say we keep the spare key to the safety deposit box? Just curious, do we have copies of the deed here at home? One evening, I caught him in my home office, rifling through my filing cabinet. My phone was in my hand before I even thought about it, capturing him pulling out folders, checking labels, clearly searching for something specific. Lost something? I asked from the doorway. He jumped, shoving papers back hastily. Just looking for our insurance documents. Mom thinks we're overpaying. They're in the blue folder, third drawer. I watched him pretend to find them, pretend to be satisfied. Since when does your mom review our insurance? She's just trying to help us save money, Cor. Why are you always so suspicious of her? I didn't answer. But that night, I uploaded every important document to a cloud storage account Jason didn't know about, and I changed the password on our home security system, just in case. I'd spent 2 weeks planning the perfect Friendsgiving. 12 of our closest friends, including Rachel Torres, my best friend since Berkeley Law School, who now ran her own real estate practice. The dining room table was extended to its full length, decorated with amber candles and autumn leaves I'd collected from our backyard maple tree. This was supposed to be our first major holiday in the new house, a chance to show everyone we'd finally made it. The turkey was in the oven, wine was breathing on the sideboard, and Jason seemed genuinely excited for once. "This looks amazing, babe," he said, kissing my cheek as he adjusted the playlist. For a moment, I let myself believe everything was normal. At 6:30, just as our first guests arrived, Margaret swept through the front door without knocking. She wore her best St. John's suit and carried an expensive leather portfolio bag, odd for a casual dinner. "Margaret!" I forced brightness into my voice. "I didn't know you were coming." "Jason invited me weeks ago." She air-kissed my cheek, her perfume overwhelming. "Didn't he tell you?" I looked at Jason, who suddenly became very interested in greeting other guests. "Must have slipped my mind," he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. Rachel caught my expression from across the room and raised an eyebrow. I shook my head slightly. Not now. But she moved closer anyway, her lawyer instincts clearly activated. Margaret settled into the chair at the head of the table, my chair, and placed her portfolio bag prominently beside her. "I have something very important to announce tonight," she said loud enough for everyone to hear, her eyes gleaming with an excitement that made my stomach clench. I had no idea I was about to be ambushed in my own home. At 8:30 p.m., just as I was bringing out the homemade pumpkin pie, Margaret stood up, tapping her wine glass with a silver spoon. The cheerful conversation died instantly. "Everyone, I have wonderful news to share." She reached into her portfolio with theatrical deliberation. "As of today, I'm the proud owner of this beautiful home." The room went silent. Someone's fork clattered onto their plate. "Jason, my wonderful son, has transferred the deed to me for $5. Isn't that generous?" She pulled out a document and waved it above her head like a flag. "It's all legal and binding, filed with the county this morning." My knees nearly buckled. I gripped the pie server so hard my knuckles went white. Across the table, Jason stared at his plate, his face flushed red. "What?" The word came out as a whisper. I cleared my throat, tried again. "What are you talking about, Margaret?" "Oh, didn't Jason tell you? We completed the paperwork last week, see?" She held the document toward me, and I saw enough to recognize a quitclaim deed. "Your signature is right there, dear." Though I must say, your handwriting has improved. Rachel was already on her feet, moving toward the document with professional interest. May I? Without waiting for permission, she took the paper from Margaret's hand. Her eyes scanned rapidly, and I saw her jaw tighten. This is interesting, Rachel said carefully. Karina, when exactly did you sign this? I didn't. My voice was steady now, cold as winter rain. I have never seen that document in my life. Margaret's smile widened. Oh dear, are you feeling all right? Perhaps the stress of hosting has gotten to you. Jason, tell her about your meeting at the notary. The room felt like it was spinning. 12 pairs of eyes darted between Margaret's triumphant face and my frozen expression. Jason finally looked up, his voice barely audible. Karina, it's just a formality. For taxes. Mom explained it would save us. Stop. The word came out sharp enough to cut glass. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. You forged my signature? Nobody forged anything, Margaret interjected smoothly. You were probably just distracted when you signed. You artists can be so absent-minded. Rachel moved closer to me, her hand briefly touching my elbow. A lawyer's gesture that said, "Stay calm, I've got this." She held up the document. This signature doesn't match Karina's usual style. I've seen her sign dozens of documents. Our friend Mark, a CPA, leaned forward. Wait, you can't just transfer a house for $5. There are tax implications, gift taxes. All handled, Margaret said dismissively. I've been in banking for 30 years. I know what I'm doing. I looked at Jason. Really looked at him. The man I'd shared a bed with for 7 years couldn't meet my eyes. Did you really think I'd signed this? My voice was quiet now, dangerous. Mom said you did it online, Your mother said? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. And you believed her over me? The room was suffocating. Our friends sat frozen, witnesses to the complete destruction of my marriage. Rachel stepped between me and Margaret, her voice carrying the authority of a courtroom. Margaret, if this signature was forged, we're talking about a federal crime, wire fraud, forgery, conspiracy. How dare you threaten me in my own house? Margaret snapped. Your house? I said softly. We'll see about that. Excuse me, I said, my voice eerily calm. I need to get some water. I walked to the kitchen with measured steps, feeling every eye in the room following me. Rachel was right behind me, closing the door softly. Karina, breathe. We can fix this. I know. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady despite the rage burning in my chest. I've been preparing for something like this. Rachel's eyebrows shot up. What do you mean? 2 weeks ago, I hired a private investigator, found emails between Jason and Margaret planning something for tonight. I showed her my phone screen, screenshots of messages discussing Operation Thanksgiving, and finally getting rid of her. Holy shit, Cor, you knew? I suspected, but I didn't think they'd actually... I stopped, composed myself. I have the real deed in a safety deposit box at Chase, not Wells Fargo like I told them. I have video of Jason practicing my signature, and right now, my phone is recording everything in that dining room. Rachel grabbed my shoulders. You brilliant, brilliant woman. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We go back out there, and you play shocked and weak. Let them incriminate themselves further. I've got a judge who owes me a favor. We can get an emergency injunction tonight. Tonight? The courthouse has a night duty judge for domestic situations. This qualifies. She was already texting. My colleague Tom is online now. He's pulling up the property records. That deed they filed? If it's fraudulent, we can have it frozen within hours. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders. Let's go back out there. I want to hear exactly how they did it. Rachel squeezed my hand. Remember, you're gathering evidence now. Every word they say is another nail in their coffin. I returned to the dining room, making my voice small and confused. Margaret, I don't understand. How could this happen without me knowing? She preened. unable to resist explaining her cleverness. Oh, it was quite simple. Jason brought the papers home. You signed them with some other documents. You probably didn't even read them. You never do pay attention to the important things. But the notary? My friend Linda from the bank. She's very understanding about family situations. Margaret's smile was poisonous. Sometimes wives sign things without realizing. Happens all the time in my experience. I felt Rachel stiffen beside me. Admitting to notary fraud in front of 12 witnesses, Margaret had just handed us a gift. And if I refused to accept this? I asked, my phone in my lap still recording. Jason finally spoke up. Karina, please, Mom's just trying to help us. The tax benefits will save you thousands, Margaret finished. Of course, if you're unhappy with the arrangement, you could always leave. I'm sure Jason could find someone more appreciative of his generosity. There it was, the real plan. Is that what this is about? I looked at Jason. You want a divorce but don't want to split the assets? His silence was answer enough. Margaret pulled out another document. If you're thinking of fighting this, I should mention I've also filed a claim that you've been mentally unstable. Depression, anxiety, unable to make sound decisions. Jason's been documenting your episodes. What episodes? But even as I asked, I saw Jason's guilt-stricken face and knew. Every time I'd cried about his mother's intrusions, every moment of frustration, he'd been building a case. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that for a moment I couldn't breathe. What Margaret and Jason didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment for 2 weeks, ever since I'd accidentally seen an email on Jason's laptop. It started innocently. I was looking for a recipe he'd saved when an email notification popped up from Margaret. Operation Thanksgiving is a go. She suspects nothing. My blood had run cold. I'd taken a photo before the notification disappeared, then pretended everything was normal while I planned my defense. The private investigator cost me $3,000 I'd scraped together by selling my vintage jewelry collection. Within days, he'd found everything. Jason had been siphoning money from our joint account, $50,000 over 6 months, transferred to an account only he controlled. Margaret had been meeting with a real estate attorney who specialized in creative property transfers. They'd even scheduled a moving company for the day after Thanksgiving. I'd moved our real deed to Chase Bank, keeping the Wells Fargo box active with fake documents. The hidden cameras I'd installed in our home office, disguised as phone chargers, captured Jason practicing my signature over and over, Margaret coaching him. Make the C rounder, she always curves it more. The hardest part was acting normal. Kissing Jason goodnight knowing he was planning to steal everything. Smiling at Margaret's insults while documenting every interaction. But I had Rachel reviewing everything, building an airtight case. We're not just going to stop them, Rachel had promised. We're going to destroy them legally. Fraud, conspiracy, attempted theft. These are felonies, Karina. Now, sitting at my friendsgiving table, with the evidence playing on my phone, I knew the trap was about to spring. I just needed them to keep talking, keep bragging, keep digging their own graves. The woman they'd dismissed as just an artist was about to teach them about consequences. While Margaret held court in my dining room, my support network was mobilizing. Rachel had connected me with 3 crucial allies over the past 2 weeks, and each was playing their part tonight. First was Mark, our CPA friend sitting at the table, who'd already reviewed our finances at my request. He'd found discrepancies that would make any prosecutor salivate. Jason had claimed business losses that didn't exist, writing off personal expenses that traced back to someone named Jennifer Walsh. A woman whose social media showed her sporting new jewelry that looked suspiciously like pieces from my grandmother's collection Jason claimed were stolen last month. Second was our neighbor, Tom Thompson, the retired FBI agent who lived 2 houses down. When I'd shown him the forged documents, his expression had gone from grandfatherly concern to professional fury. In my 30 years with the Bureau, I've seen this exact scam dozens of times. The family member angle makes it worse. Judges hate domestic fraud. He was monitoring tonight's events from his living room, ready to provide federal law enforcement context if needed. The third ally was unexpected: Linda Patterson, the notary Margaret had mentioned. What Margaret didn't know was that Linda had already been questioned by the state licensing board about suspicious notarizations. When Rachel's colleague contacted her this afternoon with evidence of another fraudulent notarization, Linda had flipped immediately, agreeing to testify in exchange for immunity. Our encrypted Signal group chat was buzzing. Mark: she just admitted to tax fraud on recording. Tom: that's conspiracy across state lines, FBI jurisdiction. Rachel: Judge Martinez is standing by. Say the word. I glanced at my phone under the table. Everything was proceeding perfectly. Margaret thought she was the chess master, but she didn't realize she'd already been checkmated. She just hadn't seen it yet. You know what, Margaret? I said, standing slowly. You're right. I should check my records. Maybe I did sign something. I walked to my office, knowing Jason would follow. He did, closing the door behind him. Karina, please understand. Understand what? I pulled out my filing cabinet, making a show of searching. That you've been planning to steal our house, or that you've been cheating with Jennifer Walsh? His face went white. How did you— The PI you didn't know I hired? He's very thorough. I pulled out a manila folder, thick with printed emails and photos. 3 months pregnant, isn't she? Did Margaret arrange that too, or was that your own initiative? It's not— she doesn't mean anything. Neither do I, apparently. I found what I was looking for. A folder labeled Insurance that actually contained video stills from our hidden cameras. Is this you practicing my signature? Because it sure looks like you. Jason grabbed for the folder, but I was faster, stepping back against the desk. Mom said it was the only way. You'd never agree to a divorce, and California's community property laws would give me half of everything, including your stock options that vest next month, worth about $400,000, right? His mouth opened and closed like a fish. Behind him, the door cracked open, Rachel recording everything on her phone. Jason, I said quietly, did you know that forging a spouse's signature on property documents is a federal crime? Did Margaret mention that when she was coaching you through it? She said no one would find out, that you'd be too embarrassed to fight it publicly. I smiled then, cold and sharp. Your mother really doesn't know me at all. If you're watching this right now, I need you to comment below. What would you do if you discovered your spouse and mother-in-law were conspiring to steal your home? This story is about to take an even darker turn, and I promise you, the ending will be worth it. Please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. And remember, everything I'm about to share shows the importance of protecting yourself legally. The justice system works, but only if you document everything. Now let me tell you what happened when we returned to that dining room. While Jason stood frozen in my office, Rachel was already on her phone with Judge Martinez. Your Honor, we have a situation of urgent domestic fraud in progress. The perpetrators are currently in the victim's home, admitting to forgery on recording. Yes, sir. We have 12 witnesses. The property value is $1.2 million. Yes, I'll hold. She looked at me, her expression fierce. Emergency injunction will be ready in 20 minutes. It'll freeze all property transfers involving your address for the next 30 days while the investigation proceeds. Margaret won't be able to file anything else, and that fraudulent deed becomes evidence of a crime, not a legal document. From the dining room, we could hear Margaret's voice growing louder. Where did they go? This is ridiculous. Jason, go get your wife. We need to go back, I said, gathering the evidence folders. Let her keep talking. Rachel nodded. The more she says, the worse it gets for her. Oh, and Karina? She smiled grimly. Tom Thompson just texted. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit would like a word with Margaret about that notary friend of hers. Turns out Linda has been under investigation for 6 months. Jason's face had gone from white to green. The FBI? Mom said this was just a family matter. Your mother lied, Rachel said flatly. She's been planning this for over a year. We have the paper trail. As we walked back to the dining room, I felt a strange calm settling over me. The woman who'd criticized my career, belittled my contributions, and tried to steal my home was about to learn what happened when you underestimated someone just because they were quiet. Ready? Rachel whispered. I've been ready for 2 weeks, I replied, and opened the door. Margaret was standing at the head of the table when we returned, her face flushed with wine and indignation. There you are. I was just explaining to everyone that you'll need to vacate within 30 days. That's more than generous, considering I could demand immediate possession. The room was dead silent. Our friends sat frozen, some with phones discreetly recording, others looking like they wanted to flee. Mark caught my eye and nodded slightly. He was documenting everything. 30 days? I said mildly, taking my seat. That seems rushed. Well, if you prefer, we could make it sooner. Margaret's smile was vicious. Jason, tell her about the moving company. Jason mumbled something unintelligible. Speak up, son. Tell your soon-to-be ex-wife about premium movers. They're scheduled for Saturday. Saturday? Rachel's voice cut through the tension. That's in 2 days. Yes, well, we wanted to avoid any unpleasantness. Margaret pulled out another document. I've also taken the liberty of drafting a separation agreement. Very generous, considering the circumstances. Karina gets to keep her little design supplies and her car. The 10-year-old Honda, she added with a sneer. How thoughtful, I said. And what circumstances would those be? Your mental instability, of course. Jason's been documenting everything. The crying fits, the paranoia about me visiting, the erratic behavior. Any judge would see you're unfit to manage property. Our friend Sarah, a therapist, spoke up. That's not how mental health evaluations work at. I don't recall asking for your input, Margaret snapped. Then turning back to me. If you fight this, Karina, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you really are. Unstable, ungrateful, unfit. The threat hung in the air like poison gas, and I knew it was time. I picked up the quitclaim deed Margaret had been waving around, studying it with the calm focus I used when selecting paint colors. Margaret, this is fascinating, but I have a few questions about this signature. What about it? Her voice was sharp, defensive. Well, for starters, I always sign Karina M. Friedman, with my middle initial. This just says Karina Friedman. I held the paper up to the light. Also, the notary seal. Linda Patterson, you said? Isn't she the one under investigation by the state licensing board? Margaret's face flushed. How could you possibly know? And this date, I continued, as if she hadn't spoken. November 15th. I was in Los Angeles that day, at a design conference. I have receipts, registration records, and about 40 Instagram posts from other attendees showing me there. Rachel leaned forward. That would make it physically impossible for Karina to have signed this in person, as the notarization claims. She could have signed it before, Jason started. No, Mark interrupted, pointing at the document. The notary stamp specifically states personally appeared before me on this date. If Karina wasn't there, that's notary fraud. Margaret snatched the paper back. You're lying. Jason said you were home that day. Jason says a lot of things. I pulled out my phone, showing my Google timeline. But GPS doesn't lie, neither do credit card records, or the Uber receipts from LAX. The room was electric with tension. Our friends were no longer pretending not to watch. Everyone was openly staring as Margaret's confident facade began to crack. Even if there was some minor discrepancy, Margaret stammered, the deed has been filed. It's legal now. Is it though? I asked softly. Because I wonder what the FBI will think about it. The FBI? Margaret laughed, but it sounded forced. Don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic, I'm being factual. I stood up, my voice carrying clearly through the room. 10 days ago, I filed a report with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Forgery of a signature on property documents worth over $1 million? That's wire fraud. That's a federal crime. Jason jerked back in his chair. You did what? I protected myself. When I found your practice signatures in the trash, yes, Jason, you should have shredded them. I knew I needed help beyond local police. I turned to our guests. Tom Thompson, our neighbor, used to be FBI. He helped me file the report properly. Rachel stood up beside me. The agents are actually very interested in this case. The pattern of domestic financial abuse, the conspiracy between family members, the involvement of a notary already under investigation, it's what they call a gift-wrapped case. You're bluffing, Margaret said, but her hands were shaking. Am I? I walked to the window, pulled back the curtain. That black SUV that's been parked outside for the last hour? Agents Melissa Chen and Robert Davis. They're waiting for my signal. Margaret rushed to the window, her face draining of color when she saw the vehicle with government plates. They wanted to come in earlier, I continued, but I asked them to wait. I wanted you to confess everything in front of our friends first, which you did. Beautifully. Jason, Margaret turned to her son. You said she'd never fight back. You said she was too weak. And there it was, the final admission. Jason hadn't just betrayed me, he'd actively portrayed me as weak to his mother, encouraging her scheme. Jason stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. Mom, you told me Karina had already signed. You said the notary confirmed it. Margaret's mask finally slipped completely. Oh, grow up, Jason. You knew exactly what we were doing. You practiced her signature for hours. You said it was just for practice, in case she was traveling and needed documents signed. And you believed that? Margaret's laugh was bitter. You wanted to believe it because you're too weak to divorce her properly, too scared of losing your precious stock options. Mom, Jason's voice cracked. You used me? I did what you didn't have the spine to do. That girl, she pointed at me, was never good enough for you. A freelance designer? Please. Jennifer understands your worth. She comes from a good family, has her own money. Jennifer? Sarah, one of our guests, gasped. The woman from your office? The one you said was just a colleague? She's pregnant, I said quietly. 3 months. Margaret arranged the whole thing, introduced them at a charity gala, encouraged the affair, probably picked out the engagement ring Jason bought her last week. The room erupted. Jason sank into his chair, head in his hands. Mom, what did you do? I gave you a future, a real wife, not this gold digger. This gold? Gold digger? I laughed, actually laughed. Margaret, I put $300,000 of my inheritance into this house. Every penny from my grandmother's estate. Jason gambled away nearly that much on crypto and online poker, which you helped him hide. Who's the gold digger here? Margaret's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. For the first time since I'd known her, she had nothing to say. I walked to my office and returned with a leather portfolio, nicer than Margaret's, a detail that didn't escape her notice. Since we're sharing documents tonight, I have some of my own. I laid them out methodically on the dining table, like a prosecutor presenting evidence. Email conversations between Margaret and Jason planning tonight's ambush. Video stills of Jason practicing my signature, date and time stamped. Bank records showing unauthorized withdrawals from our joint account. And my personal favorite. I placed down a printed screenshot. Margaret's text to someone named Richard Blackwood. Once I have the house, we can flip it for double. My idiot son and his wife will never know what hit them. You went through my phone? Margaret shrieked. No, your friend Richard's wife did, during their divorce proceedings. She was very interested to learn about your relationship with her husband. I smiled coldly. She's witness number 7 for the prosecution. Rachel picked up the narrative thread seamlessly. The FBI has been building a RICO case, Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. When multiple people conspire to commit fraud, it becomes organized crime. The penalties are severe. 20 years federal prison, Tom Thompson said from the doorway. He'd been listening from the kitchen. Plus asset forfeiture. Margaret, they can take everything you own. Our 12 dinner guests were transfixed. Someone, I think it was Mark's wife, was live streaming on Instagram. The viewer count was already at 3,000 and climbing. This is insane! Margaret grabbed for the documents, but I was faster, sweeping them back into the portfolio. No, Margaret, this is justice, and we're just getting started. I pulled out my phone. Should I invite the agents in now, or would you like to confess to anything else first? Margaret's desperation transformed into pure venom. You little bitch! You think you've won? I'll destroy you! I know about your anxiety medication, your therapy sessions after your mother died. I'll tell everyone you're mentally unstable. Go ahead, I said calmly. Taking care of my mental health after losing my mother isn't a crime. Forging signatures is. She turned to the room, wild-eyed. She's lying. She's always been jealous of my relationship with Jason. She probably forged these documents herself. Margaret, Rachel said, holding up her phone, you might want to stop talking. Your lawyer is texting me. He's dropping you as a client. Margaret snatched the phone, reading the message. Her lawyer had seen the live stream and wanted no part of a federal fraud case. Her face went from red to purple to white in seconds. I'll burn this house down before I let you keep it, she screamed. Tom Thompson stepped forward. Ma'am, you just made a terroristic threat in front of 13 witnesses and on live stream. That's another felony. Margaret pulled out her phone with shaking hands, trying to call someone, anyone, for help. But word was already spreading through her social circle. The live stream had gone viral. Comments were pouring in. OMG, is this real? That poor woman. Call the FBI now. Jason finally spoke, his voice broken. Mom, please stop. You're making it worse. Shut up, she rounded on him. This is your fault. If you'd been man enough to handle your wife, to handle me, I stepped forward. Like property? Like something you own? You're nothing, Margaret spat. A nobody who got lucky marrying my son. Your son, I said quietly, is going to prison too, for conspiracy, fraud, and theft. Congratulations, Margaret, you've destroyed your own family. Before you continue insulting me, Margaret, let's discuss who really paid for this house. I pulled out a bank statement, holding it up for everyone to see. $300,000 from my grandmother's estate. That's 40% of the purchase price. That's a lie. Here's the wire transfer receipt. And here's Jason's contribution, or rather, what was left of it after he lost $200,000 gambling online. I showed another document. DraftKings, FanDuel, underground poker sites. You knew about it, Margaret. You helped him hide it from me. Jason's head snapped up. You knew about the gambling? I'm a designer, not an idiot. I track every penny because I have to. Freelance income isn't steady. I noticed the patterns, the secret credit cards, the business trips to Vegas. Mark spoke up from his seat. As their CPA, I can confirm Karina's numbers. She also paid 70% of the monthly mortgage while building her business. But Jason makes 3 times what she does, Margaret protested. Made, I corrected. He was fired 2 weeks ago for misuse of company funds. Didn't tell you that, did he, Margaret? The stock options you're so worried about? They're gone. Forfeited when he was terminated for cause. The room gasped collectively. Jason looked like he'd been punched. Margaret turned to her son. You said you were getting promoted. I was going to fix it. I just needed time. Time to steal my house and run off with your pregnant girlfriend? I asked. How noble. Rachel added. The house is titled as community property, but Karina's inheritance is traceable as separate property investment. Legally, she could claim majority ownership even without the fraud. With it, Margaret, you and Jason are looking at massive restitution payments on top of criminal penalties. I stood up slowly, walking to Margaret with measured steps. The room held its breath as I reached into my portfolio and pulled out a pristine white envelope. Margaret, since we're exchanging documents tonight, I have one more for you. She recoiled as if the envelope might bite her. What is that? Take it and find out. I held it out patiently, like offering a treat to a skittish animal. With trembling fingers, she took the envelope, tearing it open. As she read, her face went through a symphony of emotions. confusion, understanding, then absolute horror. "This is," she whispered. "An emergency protective order from Judge Martinez, signed 20 minutes ago," Rachel announced to the room. "It freezes all property transfers involving this address for the next 30 days pending investigation. It also includes a restraining order. Margaret cannot come within 500 feet of this property or Karina. But more importantly," I continued, pulling out a second envelope, "this is a civil lawsuit for fraud, conspiracy, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and theft. You're being sued for 3 times the value of the house in damages. That's $3.6 million, Margaret." The papers slipped from her numb fingers, scattering on the floor. Jason scrambled to pick them up, reading frantically. "And this," I pulled out a third envelope, handing it to Jason, "is for you. Divorce papers, already filed. Given the fraud, my lawyer says I can claim the house entirely as separate property." "You can't. This isn't," Margaret stuttered. "Actually, she can," said a clear voice from across the room. One of our guests, David, whom Margaret had ignored all evening, stood up. "I'm a Superior Court judge. I've been watching this unfold, and I'll be happy to testify to everything I've witnessed tonight." The doorbell rang with the formal authority of inevitability. Everyone froze. "That would be Agents Chen and Davis," I said, walking to the door. "I texted them 5 minutes ago." 2 FBI agents entered. Professional, composed, their badges visible. The woman, Agent Chen, surveyed the room while Agent Davis focused on Margaret. "Mrs. Margaret Smith?" Agent Davis's voice was neutral, official. "We need you to come with us for questioning regarding allegations of wire fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit fraud." "I'm not going anywhere without my lawyer." "You're not under arrest at this time, ma'am. This is voluntary questioning. However, if you refuse, we'll return with a warrant." Agent Chen held up an evidence bag. "We'll need that fraudulent deed as evidence." Margaret clutched the paper to her chest. "This is mine. My son gave it to me." "Ma'am, that document is evidence in a federal investigation." Agent Davis stepped forward. "You can hand it over voluntarily, or we can get a warrant. Your choice." Rachel spoke up. "Margaret, as an attorney, I advise you to cooperate. It'll look better for you." With shaking hands, Margaret surrendered the deed. Agent Chen sealed it in an evidence bag, labeling it carefully. "Mr. Jason Smith," Agent Davis turned to my soon-to-be ex-husband, "we'll need you to come to the field office tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp. Bring any documentation related to this property transfer." Jason nodded mutely, looking like a broken puppet. The agents turned to me. "Mrs. Friedman, thank you for your cooperation. The prosecutor will be in touch within 48 hours." As they prepared to leave with Margaret, Agent Chen paused. "Oh, and Mrs. Smith? That notary, Linda Patterson? She's already in custody. She's been very cooperative." Margaret's collapse was total and devastating. She sank into a chair, her perfect composure shattered like expensive crystal. The woman who'd walked into my home with such arrogance was now a trembling shadow. "Please," she whispered, looking at me with desperate eyes. "Karina, please, I'm sorry. I'll give it all back. I'll tell them it was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I kept my voice level. "You coached my husband to forge my signature. You conspired to steal my home. You tried to destroy my reputation. Which part was the misunderstanding?" "I just wanted what was best for Jason." "No." Jason's voice cut through her excuse. "You wanted control. You always have. You picked Jennifer. You planned this whole thing. You used me." "Everything I did was for you," Margaret wailed. "Everything you did was for yourself," Jason replied, his voice hollow. "Karina's right. You destroyed our family." The live stream viewer count had hit 50,000. Comments flooded in supporting me, sharing their own stories of toxic in-laws, celebrating the justice unfolding in real time. Margaret tried one last manipulation. "If you send me to prison, think about what people will say. The scandal is what you did, not what happens to you because of it," Rachel interjected. "Take responsibility for once in your life." Tom Thompson stepped forward. Ma'am, I've seen a lot of criminals in my career. The ones who cooperate, who show genuine remorse, they get lighter sentences. The ones who keep lying, keep manipulating, he shook his head. Judges throw the book at them. Margaret looked around the room, searching for one sympathetic face, one ally. She found none. Even Jason had turned away from her. Get out of my house, I said quietly. Now. Are you feeling that justice finally being served? This is exactly what happens when we document everything and stand up to bullies, even when they're family. If this story is helping you recognize the importance of protecting your assets legally, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the conclusion. You won't believe what happened in the aftermath. Remember, always keep notarized copies of your important documents in a secure location that only you control. Now let me tell you how this all ended. As the FBI agents escorted Margaret toward the door, Jason made one last desperate attempt to salvage something from the wreckage. Karina, wait, please. He moved toward me, hands outstretched. We can work this out. I'll testify against Mom. I'll sign whatever you want. We can start over. Start over? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. With your pregnant girlfriend? With the gambling debts you hid? With the trust you destroyed? I made mistakes, but I love you. You practiced forging my signature for hours, Jason. That's not a mistake. That's a crime. I pulled out my phone, showing him a video. This is you, 3 days ago, telling Jennifer you'd have the house by Thanksgiving, that I was too stupid to see it coming. The room collectively gasped. On the small screen, Jason's voice was clear. Karina's so trusting, it's pathetic. Mom's right, she doesn't deserve what we have. I didn't mean. You chose your side, Jason. You chose it every time you let your mother insult me. Every time you gambled away our savings. Every time you lied. I handed him another envelope. The divorce papers are already filed. Due to the fraud, my lawyer says I can expedite it. You'll be served officially tomorrow. But the baby, Jennifer's baby, is your responsibility, not mine, though you should know Jennifer's husband called me yesterday. Oh, didn't she mention she was married? Apparently, you're not the only one she's been playing. Jason's face crumpled completely. He'd lost everything. His wife, his house, his job, his mother's respect, and now even his mistress was a lie. You did this to yourself, I said softly. Both of you did. I stood in the center of my dining room, and addressed everyone with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Margaret, Jason, you need to leave, now. The restraining order is already in effect. Margaret, flanked by the FBI agents, turned for one last venomous look. This isn't over. Yes, it is. My voice carried the authority of someone who'd finally found their power. This is my house. Get out. Now. The room erupted in spontaneous applause. 12 friends who'd witnessed my humiliation were now witnessing my triumph. Rachel stood beside me, a protective presence. Mark's wife was still streaming, the comments flowing with support and celebration. Jason gathered his coat with shaking hands. My things will be packed and placed in storage. You can coordinate pickup through your lawyer. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. That key your mother used? The locks are being changed tonight. As the FBI agents escorted Margaret out, she tried one final manipulation, calling out loud enough for everyone to hear. I only wanted what was best for my grandchildren. The grandchildren you'll never meet, I replied. Any future children I have will be protected from you by law. The door closed behind them with a decisive click. For a moment, the room was silent. Then Sarah raised her wineglass. To Karina, who just showed us all what boundaries look like. To Karina, the room echoed. Rachel hugged me tight. You did it. You really did it. We did it, I corrected, looking around at my true family, the friends who'd stood by me. And Margaret was wrong about one thing. She said I was nothing, a nobody. But tonight, I'm exactly who I need to be. Free. The next morning came with swift, decisive consequences. Rachel called me at 8 a.m. with updates that made my coffee taste like victory. Margaret was formally arrested an hour ago, she reported. The charges are serious: wire fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Her bail is set at $100,000. Can she make bail? Here's the beautiful irony. Jason has to post it. She needs a family member to guarantee it, and he's all she's got. But with his job gone and assets frozen, he's scrambling. By noon, the dominoes were falling faster. Tom Thompson called with federal updates. The FBI found 3 other cases where Margaret helped family members with property transfers. This is a pattern, Karina. You're not her first victim, but you'll be her last. The restraining order was fully in effect. Margaret couldn't come within 500 feet of my home, my workplace, or me personally. The violation would mean immediate jail time. Jason's situation was equally grim. His former employer had filed charges for embezzlement after finding more discrepancies. His assets were frozen pending investigation. The pregnant girlfriend? Disappeared after learning he was broke. The house is protected, Rachel confirmed. Judge Martinez extended the freeze on all property transfers indefinitely pending criminal proceedings. Margaret's fraudulent deed is void. You're safe. That afternoon, a forensic accountant Rachel recommended found something stunning. Margaret had been siphoning money from Jason's accounts for years, building her own nest egg while encouraging his gambling to keep him dependent. She wasn't protecting him, the accountant explained. She was controlling him, ensuring he'd never leave her influence. The investigation would take months, but the immediate danger was over. Margaret was facing potential federal charges with a 5 to 10-year sentence. Jason faced 2 to 3 years. Their conspiracy had unraveled completely. Within 48 hours, the video of our Friendsgiving confrontation had gone viral. 2 million views and climbing. The comments section became a support group for others who'd faced similar family betrayals. My MIL tried the same thing. This gives me courage to fight back. Queen energy! You handled that with such class. That moment when she pulled out the court papers, chills. But the real impact was local. Margaret's carefully cultivated reputation crumbled overnight. The charitable foundation where she served on the board released a terse statement. Margaret Smith has resigned from her position, effective immediately. Her country club revoked her membership after 3 other members came forward with stories of her helping with their financial matters. Jason's professional destruction was equally complete. Word spread through Silicon Valley's tight-knit tech community. He was radioactive, unhireable. The pregnant girlfriend? Turned out she wasn't pregnant at all. She'd been running her own con, targeting married men with money. When she learned Jason was broke and facing prison, she vanished like smoke. 3 women contacted me privately through Rachel, all former daughters-in-law of Margaret's friends, all with eerily similar stories of attempted property theft. We formed a support group, sharing evidence for the FBI's expanding investigation. She had a whole playbook, one woman told me. Isolate the wife, manipulate the son, create financial dependence, then strike. You're the first one who fought back successfully. Local news picked up the story. Berkeley woman exposes mother-in-law's $1 million fraud scheme. The segment included legal experts explaining how common family property fraud was and how to protect yourself. My design business exploded. 5 new clients in a week, all wanting to support someone who'd stood up to abuse. My story had resonated far beyond what I'd imagined. 6 weeks after Friendsgiving, I stood in my home office, completely redesigned, every trace of Jason's presence erased. The hidden cameras were gone, replaced with beautiful artwork from local artists. The filing cabinet that once held evidence of betrayal now contained contracts for my thriving business. I'd changed every lock, installed a new security system, and most symbolically, painted the master bedroom in colors Jason had always hated. Deep jewel tones that made the space feel like a sanctuary. My design studio, Friedman Interiors, was booming. The viral story had brought an unexpected gift: clients who valued strength and authenticity. My new tagline? Designing spaces, setting boundaries. My income had jumped from $45,000 to a projected $150,000 for the year. The divorce was proceeding quickly. Due to the fraud, California's normally equal distribution laws didn't apply. Jason would get nothing from the house, and he owed me $200,000 in restitution for the stolen funds and hidden gambling debts. I joined a support group for survivors of financial abuse, not as a victim, but as a success story. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the therapist who'd been at our Friendsgiving, ran the group. "Your story gives others permission to fight back," she told me. "You showed them it's possible to win." The house felt different now, lighter, brighter, truly mine. Every room had been reclaimed, reorganized, infused with my vision instead of Margaret's criticism. The dining room where she'd tried to destroy me had hosted 3 dinner parties since, each one a celebration of chosen family. My real triumph wasn't just keeping my house or exposing their crimes. It was discovering that I'd never been the weak, dependent woman they'd painted me as. I'd always been strong. I just needed the right moment to prove it. 6 months after that fateful Friendsgiving, justice was fully served. Margaret Smith was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison after pleading guilty to reduced charges. The judge called her actions a calculated betrayal of family trust that strikes at the heart of domestic security. She'd also been ordered to pay $500,000 in restitution, money she didn't have after her assets were seized. Jason received 2 years probation and 500 hours of community service for his role in the conspiracy. He lost his tech career permanently. No company would touch him after the embezzlement charges. Last I heard, he was working at a car rental agency, living in a studio apartment in Vallejo. The divorce was finalized with him owing me $3,000 monthly in restitution payments for the next 10 years. The house had been professionally appraised during the legal proceedings, $1.5 million, a $300,000 increase from our purchase price. Every mortgage payment, every improvement, every sacrifice had been worth it. It was mine, completely and legally mine. Jennifer Walsh, the supposed girlfriend, was facing her own legal troubles. Turns out she'd been running romance scams on multiple married men. Jason wasn't special. He was just another mark who'd fallen for her con. The poetic justice was delicious. 3 other victims of Margaret's previous schemes had come forward, leading to additional charges. Her pattern of targeting daughters-in-law and manipulating property transfers went back 15 years. She'd stolen nearly $2 million total over her career. The FBI agent, Melissa Chen, called me last week with final news. "Your case broke open a whole network of family fraud schemes. You didn't just save your house, Mrs. Friedman. You saved dozens of other women from the same fate." My story had become a cautionary tale and a beacon of hope, proof that documentation, preparation, and courage could defeat even family predators. So what did I learn from all of this? 3 crucial lessons that might save your home and your sanity. First, document everything. Every strange request, every guilt trip about money, every attempt to access your financial documents. That paranoid feeling you have? Listen to it. I started recording conversations and saving emails 2 weeks before the confrontation, and that evidence made all the difference. The FBI agent told me my documentation was the most thorough they'd ever seen in a domestic fraud case. Second, trust your gut about boundaries. When someone, especially family, pushes against your comfort zone repeatedly, they're testing how far they can go. Margaret started with small invasions and escalated to grand theft. If I'd enforced stronger boundaries from day one, she might never have attempted this scheme. Third, your support network matters more than family ties. Those 12 friends at Friendsgiving became my witnesses, my strength, my validation that I wasn't crazy. Rachel's legal expertise, Tom's FBI connections, Mark's financial knowledge. Surround yourself with people who protect you, not people who prey on you. The phrase "family doesn't do that to family" is a manipulation tactic. Family members commit 65% of financial fraud because they have access and assumed trust. Love doesn't mean unlimited access to your life, your home, or your documents. Today, my house is my sanctuary. Every room tells the story of survival and strength. The dining room where Margaret tried to destroy me now hosts monthly dinners for women escaping financial abuse. We share resources, strategies, and hope. Boundaries aren't cruel, they're necessary. Documentation isn't paranoid, it's protective. And sometimes, the family you choose is worth more than the family you're born into. Trust, but verify. Love, but protect yourself. And always keep notarized copies in a bank only you control. If this story helped you recognize red flags in your own life, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and ring the notification bell for more real stories about justice and boundaries. Comment below, have you checked your important documents lately? Are they somewhere only you can access? Next week, I'll be sharing the story of a woman who discovered her husband's double life through a single Costco receipt. You won't believe how deep that rabbit hole went. Until then, stay safe, stay documented, and remember, your home is your castle, and you alone hold the keys.